Hello chums, and welcome to yet another Sheepish look at. Today we are going to be taking a look at Spyro Reignited Trilogy on the Sony PlayStation 4. If anyone's wondering, I am playing this on a base PS4 and not a PS4 Pro, and I don't know if there are any enhancements between the two versions of the game, but I digress. Without any further ado, let's delve in. So this is basically like the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, only for the Spyro games. And a good way of really sort of describing them is they're one-to-one remakes of Spyro the Dragon 1, Spyro 2, and Spyro Year of the Dragon, all of which are among some of my favourite games of all time. So as you can imagine, when this got announced, I was ecstatic, I was jumping for joy, going, yes, I need this in my life. And now that it's out, I've finally got 100% on all three games. So how does it hold up? Well, right from the get-go, I'm going to tell you one thing, the presentation is perfect. They did a fantastic job re-presenting these games with new touch-ups, like all the dragons you collect in Spyro 1, for example, all now have unique designs. You're no longer fighting against blobs, the Norks look like actual creatures that you fight, and honestly, just everything has just jumped up in production quality by a stupid level. I mean, it makes sense. The original trilogy was on a PS1, this is a PS4, there better be a blight leap. But honestly, the presentation is perfect. There's so much love that has been put into this collection of games, with all three games looking, oh, bellissimo. They're all gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. The animations themselves as well I really want to talk about, because all the cutscenes in this collection are just animated perfectly. Like, I would happily take a Spyro movie animated like this. Now, although there are some instances I noticed where the animations didn't seem quite right, but that's probably just me nitpicking, and I don't exactly have an ideal setup for playing the game at times, so that could just be exclusive to my situation. But basically, again, it's three games split up into a trilogy that's all redone up, and I'm gonna talk about each of the games individually because they do have different, unique quirks depending on the game you're playing. So to start things off, I want to talk about the original game, Spyro the Dragon 1, in which case the evil Nasty Gnorc, or Ganasty Gnorc if you will, basically blasts the land of dragons when they insulted him live on TV, and you, being Spyro, you're a dutty little thing, you're a tiny dragon, and as a result, all of Ganasty Gnorc's energy blasts will just fly right over your head, which means you have to set out and rescue all of your fallen comrades. And all three games are basically collectathon platformers, kind of like Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, that style of game where you go into a world, you collect all the shit, then you move on to the next world, you collect all the shit, and so on and so forth. And Spyro the Dragon 1, you're basically spending the majority of the game collecting dragons, which are encapsulated in crystal. So you collect them, you get a nice witty bit of dialogue off them, and then you move on to the next one. And throughout the course of the game, you have items to collect such as gems and eggs. And during the course of Spyro 1, there's not much to these items. Like, you mainly only need you only really need all of the items that you pick up once or so during the course of the playthrough just to get to the next world. So they're kind of just sort of arbitrary, and there's no real need to pick them up in mass. But, being a collectathon game is kind of the point of the game, is just exploring the levels, and the level design is just beautiful. The level design is fantastic. I don't want to speak too much about the differences in level design, because there isn't really any difference at all. Like, all the games, basically, the level design is one-to-one accurate with the PS1 release. The only major differences are just how they're presented and the graphical touch-ups, really, so basically, the level design, fantastic, and I just recommend all three games for that. So yeah, after Spyro 1, where you collect all the dragons, and Spyro 2 was a little bit different, and Spyro 2 is a game where they tried to sort of diversify things a bit more, whereas instead of collecting dragons, now you're collecting orbs, as well as these talismans, and basically collecting talismans are as simple as getting to the end of the level, bada bing, bada boom, you get the talisman, and they are really, really easy to get. However, in the orbs in Spyro 2, those are a bit more challenging to get. I say a bit, it's really not that hard. Like, all three of these games are quite easy, I'm gonna be honest, but the orbs you pick up in Spyro 2, they're basically relegated to challenges and hidden areas in the map, so they're a little more difficult to get compared to the talismans. They actually require a little bit more work, but that's generally what you're collecting in the second game. And in a third game as well, then you're collecting Dragon eggs. Dragon Age, oh, that's something else entirely. You're collecting dragon eggs throughout the course of the full adventure as well, which replace both the dragons in Spyro 1 and the orbs and talismans in Spyro 2, and sort of combines all the systems into one big system, because you just have to collect a shit ton of them to get through the game, you know, ladies and gentlemen. But outside of that, the main differences with gameplay are that Spyro 1 is just the main bare bones sort of go to a level, find everything, leave level, go to the next level. That's basically how Spyro 1 handles. And Spyro 2 is more involved in that you go to the level, complete the level, then maybe to do some challenges of the level, then move away to the next one. And Spyro 3 sort of retains Spyro 2's mentality, but adds a lot of mini-games on top of it, such as like skateboarding, maybe a boxing mini-game. You have additional characters to play as well, depending on what worlds you go into. So it's kind of similar to Crash Bandicoot in that regard, where Crash Bandicoot 1 sort of like the bare bones, Crash Bandicoot 2 expands upon it, and then the third game adds a lot of mini-games onto the mix as well to diversify things a bit, I suppose. And in terms of the difficulty of this collection compared to the original trilogy, it's kind of similar in the Insane Trilogy was a Crash, where some areas are harder and some areas are easier, depending on what part you're doing. And there's one minigame I remember fucking dreading, which was the boxing minigame. I remember on the PS1 game, many moons ago, I had so much trouble getting through that, but on this remaster collection, I basically beat it first time, no problem whatsoever. It seems to be quite a bit easier. But on the other hand, you have these levels that basically are flying levels. You go through each stage, and you have time trials you have to go on when you're flying about the stage. These are all harder than they were on the PS1 for me, and I'm not exactly entirely sure why. I don't know whether the controls are the reason or what, because the controls are different from the PS1 game, in that obviously they're all modernized, and this isn't a one-to-one. Like, they didn't take the base game, they rebuilt everything and made it look and mimic as close to the original game. So, you know, you're going to see some inconsistencies with the control here and there, but honestly the controls overall are just better. Flying controls will take a little getting used to, I think, but all the rest of the game's controls are just fundamentally, I think they're better than the original PS1 trilogy, so that's a good thing. That is a very, very good thing. On top of all that as well, the soundtrack got reimagined as well, and the soundtrack is just as good as it was on the PS1. And if you don't like the new compositions that are in this game, one thing this game does do, which I really do appreciate, is you can just at any time switch the soundtrack back to the original, the original songs. So if you don't like the new rendition of Treetops, you just press pause, go to sound options, and change it. Simple as, which is really good, because the old songs and the old soundtrack still hold up today. Probably because the PlayStation 1 was a CD-based system, so sound quality is pretty decent for the most. But yeah, overall, what can I say about this trilogy? It's a really solid, well done series of games. I absolutely adore what Toys for Bob have actually done to Insomniac's classic games, and honestly, I wholeheartedly recommend it. It's 30 quid or $40, I believe. And honestly, you're getting 3 really solid games for that price. I think it's a steal, personally. It's just such a good deal. And in my opinion as well, I think this remaster trilogy has actually been done in a better way over the Crash trilogy. I think it seems to be a little bit more polished overall, it feels. But that's largely because Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy had an issue with the hitboxes where everything is pill-shaped, so weird things kept happening with the hitboxes that really annoyed me. Not to say that's bad, I honestly, the Crash Trilogy is just as good as well, it's just this one gets the edge for me, to be perfectly honest. And that's all I can really say about the collection. Really solid collection of games. Pick it up, just go right on ahead and play it. If you ever played Spyro growing up and you liked Spyro back then, you will love this. If you haven't played Spyro but you like the type of Spyro games, I also highly recommend this game. And if you haven't tried a game in this style before, I also recommend this, because you never know, you might really love it. Just be aware that the games are quite easy overall, but that's kind of the charm of them, because they are very they're very relaxing games to actually play through. Like, you can just sit down and play this for a few hours at a time and just enjoy, really. It's just got a nice, chill, happy, upbeat atmosphere to everything. But anyway, I digress. Overall, as I said, amazing game series. I recommend them, so go check them out. But with that, thanks for watching, and I shall see you after. Bye!
Trouble with the trolley, eh?